How did it occur? How long until from the Philippines till you got to the United States?
I lived there for about a year, but at that moment is so vivid, Dr. Hay, right? I'm glad you pick up that paragraph because I've tried it for 11 years. I've faced that many times, and finally, even on the ocean, right? I'm sure you live in Florida. People on a cruise. It's a 7-day cruise, right?
Yeah.
And it's all you can eat buffet, right? People gain multiple pounds. Like, it was the opposite for me. I mean, it was fasting for me for 7 days, right? Now, when I was on a cruise, I look back, it's like no water, no food. It is a 50-feet boat with 140 plus people. We were packed it like sardine.
Welcome to the Franchise Hot Seat Podcast, where we talk about all things franchising. Now, here's your host, Dr. John P. Hayes.
Hi, I'm John Hayes, another episode of the Franchise Hot Seat Podcast. My guest is Hao Lam. He is a franchisor with an extraordinary story. I learned about it when I read his book, which he gave to me some time ago. He's a member of our advisory board at the Titus Center. The book is From Bad to Worse to Best in Class, and it's a refugee's success story. And it's an amazing story, worth the read aside from franchising, but it's got double value because it's about franchising in the end as well. But how you are, I've never spoken to anyone, I'm sure. I've done thousands and thousands of interviews in my career. I've never spoken to anyone who really should have been dead numerous times. You were so close to it, and yet you managed to escape Vietnam. And that story is incredible. After the fall of Saigon, so many South Vietnamese tried to get to wherever they could go to have a better life. And you certainly decided to do that. But it wasn't until the 1980s that you were making your escape. And by then, nobody in the world wanted to hear anything more about Vietnamese boat people. The world had had enough, or so it seemed. Yes, it was treacherous, but in the United States, there were other issues going on as well. Somewhat like today. It was not a friendly environment, not friendly, especially for the Vietnamese who were trying to get out and to get to a country where you didn't want to just survive. You wanted to prosper. You wanted to make your country proud of you as well. You wanted to accomplish. Ideally, the kind of person we want to come in, any country wants to welcome that kind of person. But you attempted it numerous times. And as I said, should have been, would have been dead on numerous times. But by the grace of God and some luck that you had along the way, you finally made it. I think it was the fifth or seventh time that you tried, and you
more than 10 times, Dr. Hayes.
10 times. Okay.
11 years. I start. My dad arranged escape for me when I was like 8 or 9 years old. It's right after 1975, and he was in the military, working alongside with the U.S. troop, and then he disappeared one day. He was captured. He was one of the people. We thought he was dead at the beginning. We didn't hear from him. So a year later, he came home, and then when I was like 8 years old, he said, "Son, you need to leave the country. It is not a place for you to grow up." And Dr. Hay, I was 8 years old. I had no idea what he was talking about.
Right.
And then he arranged for me to escape. After escape and fail, a lot of things happened because it wasn't like today you can get a visa and jump on an airplane and come visit anywhere in the world, right? If you get a visa, but in the past, you couldn't. We have to escape. It was an organized, illegal escape. So it took, more than 10 tries, being shot at, being captured, being tortured along the way. And then 10, 11 years later, 1988, I finally made it to the Philippine refugee camp. So I lived in Palawan for 1 year.
And that's the point where I marked in the book, 7 days and nights we'd been at sea. Yeah. And our sea legs would need to adjust to walking on land. On the beach, I dropped to my knees like so many others alongside me and kissed the ground. Now, this was in the Philippines. Grains of sand sticking to my dry lips. I ran my hands over the beach's white, warm surface, knelt down, pressed my cheek into it, then simply lay down. I rolled over onto my back, looked up at the sky, tears streaming from my eyes and running down my temples and into the sand. Others were crying and jumping up and down. Land, we cried. We made it. We'd been so close to death so many times. And this was life. We'd escaped Vietnam. This was our dream come true. We'd arrived. Now, at that point, you were still on your journey because ultimately you wanted to get to the United States. And that did happen. It wasn't at the time. How did it occur? How long until from the Philippines till you got to the United States?
I lived it for about a year, but at that moment is so vivid, Dr. Hay, right? I'm glad you pick up that paragraph because I've tried it for 11 years. I've faced that many times, and finally, even on the ocean, right? I'm sure you live in Florida. People on a cruise. It's a 7-day cruise, right?
Yeah.
And
Right.
it's all you can eat buffet, right? People gain multiple pounds. Like it was the opposite for me. I mean, it was fasting for me for 7 days, right? Now, when I was on a cruise, I look back, it's like no water, no food. It is a 50-feet boat with 140 plus people. We were packed it like sardine. And then we look around, right? Even the Titanic sank. This is a 50-feet boat. You look around, there was nothing. And then I cry, it's like, where am I? Will I even see the sunrise tomorrow? Right? You were so little in the middle of the ocean, but finally made it to land, right? I waited for 11 years. A lot of my friends disappeared, never heard from them, right? One big wave and you're gone. And then that was the turning point. That was the moment, right? First of all, I live, I survive, right? Anything above, beyond that is going to be a bright future. So I finally made it. I was transferred. We were transferred to the Philippine refugee camp in Palawan. I lived there for 1 year. And then if you read the beginning part, because my family was not communist, I didn't have the opportunity to go to school. So my dad was from China. When he was 14, similar to me, he left the communists and in Vietnam. And I did not get a chance to go to school. So I spoke Cantonese at home. I spoke Vietnamese when I was living in Vietnam, but I didn't go to school, right? Ironically, today I ran an education franchise, Dr. Hay, but I basically grew up illiterate. I couldn't read and write Chinese. I couldn't read and write Vietnamese. I was so glad I had the opportunity to learn the alphabet when I was in the Philippine refugee camp. So English is my first written language. So it was pretty difficult.
When you get to the Philippines, you're still a teenager, aren't you? About 18, 19 years old?
I was 19 years old.
Yeah. So,
and I left when I was 20.
And the goal was that you would get to the United States. How did that happen? How did you get into the United States?
So actually, I went to Canada first, right? I had an opportunity to go to the U.S. because of my father, but my grandmother and my uncle, also refugee, they live in a little town in British Columbia called Prince Rupert. It's northern BC. So they sponsor me. So I lived in the Philippine refugee camp for a year. They did all the paperwork and sponsor me. So I was in Prince Rupert. I went to high school there. So when I was the Philippine refugee camp, I had a dream. My dream was to be a student. And when I talk at university and student and in high school and elementary, and the kid look at me, it's like, you want to be a student? We are student here. I didn't go to school. I want to experience. I want to like, what is the life of a student? I didn't know what high school, diploma, university, what is that like, right? In Vietnam, we just survived. But like, I long to be a student. So I studied very hard. I learned ESL for 1 year. I went to Canada, lived in a little town called Prince Rupert. And I finished high school when I was 23 years old.
And then how did you get into the United States? Tell us that story.
And then after I finished high school, I went on to UBC and finished my college degree. I met this beautiful woman in the boat. Her name is Lisa. On the love boat, we escaped together.
Yeah.
We fell in love. Her brother lived in New York. So she moved to New York. And then my grandmother sponsored me. We stay in touch. And then when I was in UBC, we got married. She moved from New York to Seattle. So in May of 1995, she live in Seattle. I live in Vancouver, BC, right? Just cross the border, 2.5 hour drive. After I graduated, I didn't have a job. She had a job down in Seattle, so it's easy math. Either I move down, I look for a job, or she moved up. Both of us were looking for a job. So I moved down. I studied math in college because I was the first person in my family who had a college degree. Nobody told me because I didn't speak English. So math was easy, right? Dr. Hey, you don't need English, study math. So I thought all college degrees were equal. I wish someone had told me you study engineering, computer science, and all that. So I studied math and moved down to Seattle. I couldn't get a job. I was hoping to work for Boeing, right? Because I thought I had a math degree. I didn't build airplane. No, I didn't have a PhD. I didn't get hired. So I put up a side and tutor math. I didn't have an MBA. I didn't know anything about franchising. It wasn't a franchise back then. So I put up a side and tutor math. That's how I started. It was 30 years ago.
Very
And
entrepreneurial. You realized you couldn't get a job with the degree that you had, but you didn't give up. You didn't go back to school, which you could have done, but you are entrepreneurial, Hao.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things about you that has driven you to success, that you've used your entrepreneurship to survive in numerous ways. So you decide to be a math tutor. How did that go?
I mean, put up a side, become a math tutor. Didn't know anything about business. Don't even know what an income statement is. And I wish there was a tighter center of franchising back then so that I could learn a little bit here and there. Do you know what to do, right? For the first 2 years, of course, like any business, we didn't make money. Just try to make ends meet, try to survive, and then put my heart and soul, like any entrepreneur, very passionate about. There's no turning back. I had nothing to do. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't get a job. Sometimes life just happened. You have to march forward. And then 2 years later, one center become two become three. At one point, I owned 11 locations in Washington State. And then the light bulb went on. I heard a little bit about franchising. Let's try to do it. And in 2010, I franchised the business.
So 2010, which is about 20 years now? Are you in your 30s?
2025, about 15 years ago. 15 years
okay.
ago.
No, I mean, after you arrived in the States, about 2010, was it?
1995,
Yeah,
1995.
I'm sorry.
I've been here for 30 years.
1995,
So 15 years later.
Okay. So where did you hear this word franchising? You know, at the time, Vietnam now, franchising is a hot spot, or Vietnam's a hot spot for franchising today, as I'm sure you know, but it wasn't back in the 1970s and 80s. Your franchise was to get out of the country somehow and survive, which you attempted all these times. And then you arrive in the United States, and franchising has some popularity, but it's mostly fast food that we're talking about. Education, franchise education. Few people heard of that, let alone the word franchising. I'm one of the oldest people in franchising today and been in it since 1979, but I didn't hear the word in a practical sense, franchising, until 1979 when I discovered what it means for business people. So here you were. How did you discover this word? How did you know that, well, I could make something out of franchising? That would be useful to me.
Yeah, because there were multiple locations. I heard about people talk about it and went to an attorney. Like today, franchising was more popular. Back then, it wasn't. And then I went to multiple attorneys. They said, yeah, you shouldn't franchise. It was very expensive. And I went the long way, Dr. Hey. I licensed the business for several years because the attorney told me, no, you don't need the franchise and all that stuff. And we did the licensing. And then we opened a
So
few
just to
locations.
clarify that, sometimes because of the expense, people want to be a franchise organization, but the expense of becoming a franchisor is an obstacle. Certainly someone in your shoes, you didn't have any money to invest thousands of dollars and to learn this way of franchising. So franchise technically means to license, and you can sell licenses to a business that is not a franchise.
Correct.
You can't have a common name. There's a limit on how much money you can take from a franchisee,
Correct.
but you could skirt all of those issues legally and be a licensing company.
Yeah, right. It is actually.
Were you
a
operating under a common name, a trademark name, or
Exactly. It was.
yeah?
It
There's a
was back
violation.
then. Yeah, that was called Franchise Education Center. We had location in Oregon and California, and then right. Every time you mention California, licensing.
And
might
did you
not-
take more than $500 from a franchisee?
Of course, back then.
So you here you are, Hao. You risked your life many times to get
Risked my
into the
best.
States, and the first thing you do is break the federal law.
Exactly.
Not in a bad way. You didn't kill anyone, fortunately.
Unintentionally.
Yeah, and you didn't do it intentionally, but here you are now breaking the federal law, as many people do, sometimes on purpose, because they want to skirt the franchise rules, which of course we don't want them to do. You don't want them to do. You're you became a legitimate franchisor, but those beginning years were difficult.
Yeah, but I operate under the advice of several attorneys who have told me that this can be done until I talk to the right person.
Yeah.
And of
then
course,
you found out, whoa, I could be in trouble, particularly in
big
California,
trouble.
where they
and
could
you know
shut
how hard
you
it is
down.
to convert, right? We have to convert all the licensee over to franchise. It was painful.
So how long did that take, and how much did that cost you?
It took about like a year or two to get it done, and then it cost back then. It probably cost me over $100,000.
Yes. If you were starting your franchise today, knowing what you know, would you franchise again? Would that be your choice?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Right. It
And-
is a wonderful journey. I like franchising wasn't easy. I have so many people came to me, right? I'm in a group called Entrepreneur Organization, like EO, you probably know. People came, hey, I want to franchise this restaurant, this cookie recipe, this chicken wing secret recipe for my grandmother. It wasn't easy. A lot of people operate 1 or 2 locations very successfully.
Right.
But franchising is a different animal. It's a different business. You need the entire team, right? It's very similar to your corporate location. You need an operation manager. You need a support staff. You need IT support. You need basically a team of people. A lot of people think that, wow, I have 2 very successful locations, right? I'm gonna franchise the business and my phone will ring and people will buy left and right. Absolutely not. I attend the franchise sales summit, right?
Yeah.
All these obstacles, Dr. Hayes, right?
So you were franchising education, math to begin with, right? And what
math
else?
and English. Yeah. I started with math and then later on we had English. Yeah.
And there were other franchises doing this. You had competition.
Of course, like any other franchise business.
And when you developed these franchisees, people who wanted to copy you, do what you do, but in their city or in their state, maybe they wanted to own 2 or 3 units. How were you able to develop a relationship with them? Because isn't that at the core of franchising, being someone who can develop a relationship between the franchisor and franchisee?
Yeah, that's why at the very beginning, the process is critically important, right? Bringing the right people in the system, right? I hate to use the word marriage, but like having a franchisor-franchisee relationship is like legally married, right? A franchise, as you know, Dr. Hayes, between 5 to 20, 30 years. We're going to be doing business together. We're going to be having weekly conversation, if not daily conversation about how we do this together, how we grow the top line, be efficient, have a healthy bottom line and all that. So that's why the process is critically important for us at the beginning. Like many other franchisees, we'll accept anybody who can frog a mirror and write us a check. We made mistake along the way, but today we are very cautious, right? We interview people, we do the discovery day, we want to make sure, right?
They're a good fit for your business.
It's a good fit, right? Doesn't mean that they are not good people, but it just might not be suitable for them to run an education business.
Yeah. So I meet, as you know, across the country, hundreds and hundreds of franchisors, franchisees, would-be franchisees. And oftentimes franchisors miss a very important point that you didn't have to purposely think about I believe. I'm on to something here. You knew that this is more than taking someone's money to become a franchisee.
Absolutely.
And teaching them for a week of what you do, providing them with an operations manual and helping them with some marketing, and they go out and they prosper. Doesn't work that way, even though many franchisors say that's the way it works, or they want people to believe that in the selling stages. And many people believe it, that it's easier to do this. If Hao Lam can build a chain of centers, I certainly can own one. And yet that may be far from the truth in terms of the capability of the individual, the fit for franchising. You develop relationships without thinking about that. How much of that have you ever thought about it? And this is what occurred to me. Here is a man who is packed like sardines in boats, not once, on multiple occasions. Here is a man who nearly starved to death, didn't have enough to drink, who was captured by pirates, who was accosted left and right by people who wanted to kill you. Many, many times you should have been dead. And yet you not only helped yourself to success and ultimately to freedom, but you helped other people along the way. You have a nurturing skill set that not every franchisor has, sadly.
Thank you.
Because when you think about your relationships in franchising, how valuable is the ability to make a relationship and to understand it's more than a transaction?
Exactly.
So how does that work in your life?
Yeah, it's a lifetime commitment. We became the best in class community. I give you some example. A lot of the time I went and visit franchisee and they insist that, Dr. Hey, I stay at their home.
Yeah.
They wouldn't allow me to stay in a hotel.
Yeah.
How cool is that? That's a kind of relationship, right? Of course, legally, in the franchise term, we don't want to use the family, right? We use the word community. We are best in class community, right? When they come into Seattle, I invite them to their house and have a cozy dinner and all that. It's a relationship that we build. We talk above and beyond business, beyond making money. How are kids doing? How do we structure our retirement? How can we travel together, right? It is a different level of commitment.
Tell me about a time when it didn't work. You tried to build relationship and you couldn't do that. Was it your fault? Was it their fault? Why do some relationships go sideways and end up in the courtroom?
Yeah, luckily, knock on the wood, because how we treat franchisee and vendor and all that, knock on the wood, we've never had, for the last 12, 13, 14, we will never had a litigation. We talk it through. Like many other systems, we have franchise who exit the system for various reasons. The pandemic, relocation and all that. And when we talk it out, if we have a very unhappy franchisee, we want to find out the root cause. Was that our issue? Was that your issue? How can we resolve this, right? I try to put myself into their shoe. Money is one thing, right? We don't want to go to court and all this stuff. What do you need? What do you want? How can I help you, right? And what do I need, right? So as long as it's a legitimate reason, we try to meet in the middle. We resolve the issue and everybody parkway. And then we had validation call that I have prospect talk to people who left the system. And they even said, how I'm so sorry. I mean, we need to live best in class for now. I hope that in the next 3 to 5 years, when things turn around, I hope you can welcome me back to become your franchisee again, right? Life happens, things happen. It's just for various reasons. But we try to solve the human issue, right? We're not trying to throw money at attorney and everybody fight. And at the end, right? We heard story, right? At the franchise conference, remember there was a story, right? Someone spent $2 million. At the end, he wished that, we resolved the issue outside the courthouse.
Yeah. So trying to resolve the human issues.
Yeah.
This is the job of a franchisor. And too often franchisors don't understand that. They don't put enough time into solving the problems of the human issue.
They showed them the FDD, Dr. Hay.
Yeah.
This is what it said. Well, there's a human element to it, right?
Yeah.
People are angry. An example would be every time people sign a renewal, there are some changes.
Yeah.
People are angry about some of the changes.
You're going to
But
go
we
from a
let-
5% royalty to a 7% royalty.
Exactly.
They can't
we
afford that.
explain it to them, right? We explain to them why we do what we do, right?
Yeah.
Like,
But before all that, Hao, there's who you bring into your franchise community. No one does it better than Chick-fil-A. 100,000 applications a year. They're going to select under 100 people who will make it. Most people don't have a chance, and it's only a $10,000 investment. It's not a traditional franchise. I understand
Yep.
that, but it's an opportunity. The average franchisee making something like $700,000 a year on a $10,000 investment. Chick-fil-A knows how to pick winners for Chick-fil-A. And Hao Lam has had to learn how to pick winners for best in class. Every franchisor needs to do that, but they don't, particularly in the emerging years when they're desperate for money to keep the doors open. And you face those kinds of issues. And yet what I want to get at is sometimes no matter how well you check it out, you needed to check it out better, the human condition or the issues at stake. How can franchisors do that better? How did you learn to do this better?
I mean, we learn every day, every transaction, but still, and when times change, people change, Dr. Hay. A lot of the time at that particular moment, it was the right person at the right time. Maybe 3 years later, right? Things change, family change, kids grow up. For example, we have a wonderful franchisee in New Jersey, right? But her son became a teenager, play football. He has to relocate. And her mother, unfortunately, had to close the business and relocate with the son, right? We could not foresee that when we signed the contract 7 years ago. So no matter how hard we try, a lot of the time these things do happen. Having said that doesn't mean we sign everybody. We try our very best. We have our core value. We want to make sure that they can live by our core value. And Dr. Hay, at the very beginning, you show up my book, and it's my business card. Before people sign, before they come to Discovery Day, I send them a copy of my book. It's who I am, right? This is best in class, is in my DNA.
Right.
If you think that you can join a team like this, die hard, having fun, working hard, give back to the community, learning and sharing, then consider us, right? And if you read the book and say, hey, I really don't think this is a good fit, and it's okay, I'm gladly introduce you to other franchise concept.
So your story, you bring qualities to business and to franchising beyond the system, the methodology of franchising. And I want to go back now into your story. You are very entrepreneurial. You would have never been a good franchisee because you like to have your hands in lots of things, as this next story illustrates. But you have everything for a franchisor. Going back, and I don't remember what year this was, you can remind us, you weren't always dedicated to just education through franchising. In short, we had no idea what we were doing. This is when you owned 3 restaurants.
Yeah.
This is where our failure came in a big way. I'm the first to admit now how naive and unprepared we were. The truth is, we opened those restaurants simply because we wanted to open them. We didn't know the business, and that quickly became clear. We didn't charge our customers enough for their meals. We didn't create a good team, and we underestimated labor costs. In other words, you didn't have a system for operating a business. We didn't take the time to figure out protocols, put systems in place as we grew. Some of the investors were willing to put in more capital as needed. Others weren't. We hadn't established a strict partnership agreement to deal with that discrepancy, making it impossible to enforce equal investment. We were hemorrhaging money from the get-go, but oh, how much fun I had, at least in the beginning. I loved the restaurant business. Every morning I'd pop out of bed, excited to face the day and all the ups and downs it would bring. So you thrived on this. This was your energy. It was chaotic. You didn't know what you were doing. But You did it anyway. Is this the mark of a good franchisor?
Yeah, I think I have fun, right? Like at the very beginning, we talk about grateful, right? Every day I woke up, I didn't get out of bed, I pop out of bed, right? I am grateful to be alive. Life is just so exciting, right? It's not just about doing business. It's not just about making money. It's about the journey. It's not the destination, right? At the end, we might exit the business. We might have a legacy business, but the journey is fascinating. It is the day-to-day thing. It is helping the franchisee. It is solving the problem. It is facing the ups and downs and leading the team. It makes business a lot of fun, right? It's no one day is the same in business, right? Especially as a franchisor, because we work with different franchisees, right? A prospective franchisee might be scared when they listen to it, but no, because the reason why you join a franchise is we have the system in place, right? We have the operation menu, we have the know-how. You just need to operate your location, locally. But we have the playbook for you. We have established. I made mistake in the first 15 years before I franchised the business. I made mistake again along the way. I still make mistake today, right? But the mistake that I made hopefully prevent my franchisee to make the same mistake in the future. I learned all the lesson and I pay for it so that my franchisee do not have to make the same mistake.
And that's what franchising, that's the beauty of franchising. But I still go back to, you didn't know anything about this back when you owned restaurants. You thought you loved, and I'm sure you did love, the restaurant business, the excitement of it. But you decided not to build your franchise around the food industry. Why was that? Why didn't you stay in restaurants and continue building?
Because at the end of the day, my true calling is education. My passion was education. We read the book. I've owned a mortgage company with 65, 70 loan officer. I've had a real estate company. We manage retail mall, office buildings and all the stuff. I was in the restaurant business and all that. But when we operate that, we thought that, okay, the first location didn't make money. Wow, if we open a second and a third, we start making money, right? A lot of franchise so did that. But man, was I wrong, right? So it wasn't easy. I wish I knew a little bit about franchising back then, and I wish I opened a franchise restaurant, right? The third that you read earlier, had I joined a franchise, probably figured out some of the labor costs up front, the pricing strategy, the labor costs, and all the stuff. But I was passionate about food. I love food, and when I had my first business, first restaurant, I partnered with a group of people. We were making money. It was a 500-seat buffet restaurant in Renton, Washington. And it was like, oh, it was easy. And then we opened another one with a different concept and didn't make money. It's like, oh, maybe when we scaled it, we make money. We opened a second one and we opened a third one. And of course, at the end of the day, we closed all three of them. So I wasn't passionate about it. But when I look back, real estate, food, and other stuff, I'm very passionate about education because of my background. I was illiterate. I know how important it is. Without education, Dr. Hay, I wouldn't be the person who I am today, right? Education totally changed me. So I quit everything, go back to best in class, franchise the business, do one thing and one thing only. Now, a lot of the time, everybody watch TV, look at Shark Tank and all that, like they have 25, 35 business. But they are billionaire, they have a big team, right? They can afford to do that. For us, we single-handedly grow the business. I cannot be having 4 or 5 business because I don't have the bandwidth at this moment, right? So I quit everything. I want to stay laser focused. I am happier. I make more money on the year that I'm staying focused and do one thing and one thing only. Because of my financial background, I never feel secure. I was hungry, right? I want to have multiple businesses because if one failed, the other thrive. I was wrong, Dr. Hay. If you do 3 things, you spend your energy in 3 different areas. You spend 33.33% of your time in business A, business B, business C. Now I spend 100% of my time and energy in growing the franchise business. And last year, I sold my last corporate location. I used to own corporate location and franchise like many other franchise concepts. I realized that I am still running two businesses. 50% operating my corporate store, 50% on franchising. I want to stay laser focused on growing. So I sold my corporate location to franchisee. Now we own 0 location, 100% support and growing the franchise.
And do you think that's the way a franchisor needs to develop for people who are watching this podcast, who are thinking about franchising their business, becoming the franchisor? Is this the only way to do it? You've got to be laser focused on that business? Or do you encourage them? Yeah, if you have multiple interests, then you pursue multiple interests. And keep in mind that there are people like you who do have multiple interests who don't want to necessarily put it all into one basket.
It depends on the concept, Dr. Hay. Like many franchises, at the very beginning, we made money because of the corporate store are profitable. That's how people start, right? Start one location, 2, 3 location, make money, have the profit to do 2 things. 1, keep opening corporate store. Number 2, start a franchise, right? As you know, it's not cheap to start a franchise today, between maybe 100,000 to 250,000. Most of the franchise, for the first 10, 20 location, they don't make money. Mm-hmm. They still rely on the profitability of their corporate location. And then when they reach a certain point, right? 25, 45, 50 maybe. When the franchise become operationally profitable, then they can consider either, grow. They have a couple of choices. Either keep opening corporate store, make money, and selling franchise at the same time, or not opening more corporate store, just purely sell franchise, or sell all the profitable corporate store like I did and focus on franchising. So it depends, right? And then as you see, a lot of the concept have some corporate store, right? To test the concept, test a new recipe, test a new product and services and all that. So it varies, but I think at the very beginning, many of the emerging franchise had several corporate stores to begin with and then franchise the business. So I am no exception.
So what about people who want to become franchisees? When they meet you, Hao, and they read your book and they listen to your story, they may say, wow, I'm not as smart as him. I'm not as driven as him. I don't have the experience that he has. But does franchising somehow make it easier for those individuals to become successful in a business?
Absolutely, because a franchisee, they have to follow the system. The last thing that we want is someone buy a franchise and reinvent the wheel, right? The franchisee doesn't have to be like us because we have, for example, for our franchise, we have the curriculum. If someone is passionate about teaching, if someone is passionate about following the system and all that, they don't have to build K-12 curriculum, right? We have built and created material and updated. We've used the material for the last 30 years, right? It will cost someone millions of dollars to create a math and English curriculum from the ground up. That's one thing, right? It will save them a lot of time. And secondly, we have a team of people who have done this, right? And help them with marketing, help them with operation, help them with how to deal with parent, teacher, teach student and all that. So we have a recipe here for them to follow.
So I want to go back to something else that you said. The first 10 franchises, maybe 20 franchises, when you said they don't make money. Well, you're talking about they don't make you, the franchisor, money. Because a franchisee, other than the initial upfront fee, let's say it's $50,000, you spend that money very quickly as a franchisor.
Oh, yeah,
if you sold through a broker, you might be giving half of that upfront fee to the broker as a commission, or paying it out to your in-house sales team. That
Correct.
leaves you with $25,000 to do the training. Maybe there's some legal work involved. There's some support issues involved. And
Yeah.
that $25,000 doesn't go very far. Hopefully it's enough. But at the end, you're back to zero. You haven't made any money. You haven't made any money yet from this franchisee just because they gave you an upfront $50,000, which
Correct.
you've invested wisely, at least half of it, back into the franchisee.
Yeah.
But the franchisee opens doors, starts marketing, and starts operating the business. Are they making money?
Yeah, it will take them maybe like any other franchise, 3, 6, 9 months, right? To get the business ramp up and all that. They might be breaking even, they might be making money, but the franchisor might not, because we collect a percentage of their sale as a royalty. But once we have that money, people think it's the profit. No, it's not my profit.
Yeah.
It
So
is-
let's break that down. A franchisee starts out and maybe they make their first $100,000 in sales. And what is your royalty? What's your percentage?
12%.
12%. So they're paying you out of that they're paying you about $12,000
$12,000. Yeah.
over a year's time for that $100,000.
Yeah.
And that $12,000, what are you doing? Taking a vacation? What are you doing with that money?
I wish I could go to Mexico or be on a 7-day cruise in Florida, Miami, right? But not the case. So we take that $12,000 and we have a team here. We have, the operation, we have the marketing, we have the IT support and all that stuff. We have a core team, right? We have a dozen people, on staff. So that's why I said at the very beginning, if you look at $12,000 times 10, $120,000, a lot of money, right? You cannot support many people, right? We have people who go and visit. We have people who do training. We have people who help them with the marketing and all that. A lot of the franchising, you are taking X%. You are making a lot of money. No, we don't. We make a small portion. We make a fraction of the royalty, if any. Right? Because we have
So
our own spend.
Let's talk about the $12,000.
Yeah.
I'm the franchisee. I paid you $12,000 this year in royalties, or maybe in half a year. Maybe I do 3 times as much in my business. It's still, I'm paying you less than $40,000 over a year's time. But how do I get value out of that as a franchisee? Is that just a cost of doing business because I use best in class as my name, and maybe that brings me some extra value in terms of new customers? Or maybe it certainly saves me time. I don't have to build a curriculum, which I wouldn't even know how to do, because you let me use your curriculum and you train me on how to build the business. But I'm not sure it's worth $40,000. And then now I've got $1 million business. Is it worth more than $100,000 a year, me paying you? How am I getting value for my royalty dollars?
Very good. Being in a franchise system, the benefit is manifold. So first of all, in an education franchise, you have the curriculum, right? In the food industry, you have the food concept and all the stuff. And secondly is the ongoing support. We always have roundtable, and then we help them, we coach them and all that. And then the next thing is the peer-to-peer group. If you run a mom and pop restaurant or tutoring center, you don't have anybody to talk to, right? We have a peer-to-peer group. We have mentorship. Someone who had been in the system longer, they mentor someone who's getting into the system, someone who had been there and done that. Right? And then you have the economy of scale, the purchasing power, the technology and all that, right? So we have a platform to help them scale the business. And the advantage is multiple fold. There are a lot of things. Now you become a best-in-class community. Every decision that you make, it is, number one, it's going to be quicker. Number two, you have a team of advisors that you can rent the idea by. And sometimes we're giving idea, hey, we have this new product and services. We have this new digital SAT class. We build a platform. You just join it, right? Because the SAT was cut off many years ago, and now they brought it back. Now it's the digital. If you're a mom and pop, there's no way you can afford a platform to do that, right? You have to be in the franchise system to be able to take advantage of, the platform.
So you have a lot of competitors in that tutoring or education, children's education niche.
Correct.
For years, the Department of Commerce has listed children's education as one of the top growth areas year after year. It's very popular to be in the children's education niche or tutoring niche, but there are a lot of big names in that marketplace. How does Best in Class compete? How do you make a name for yourself, and how do you help your franchise build million-dollar businesses?
Very good. So we have several differentiators. Number one is a passionate group, and number two, we have our own curriculum. Some of the tutoring concept is like a matchmaker, right? So they put a teacher and a student together, but they don't have their own. So we build our own curriculum. We are brick and mortar, some of them going to other people's home. And then some focus on the higher level only, some focus on the younger group only. But for us, we have 3 income streams. We have the K to A, that's a recurring model, right? People pay around $50 a month. They come in once a week, and then they have the tutoring, they have the homework. The second income stream is a private tutoring targeting the high schooler who needs some extra help in school, whether math or English or subject matters. And then the third income source is the SAT, ACT prep, right? So if they want to go to a better college, then they have to take the test, and we help them with that. So we have the recurring model, we have the private tutoring model, and we have the test prep model. Some of the competitor will do one, maybe both, but rarely someone who cover all that. And we have the material, we have the expertise to cover a K-12 model. And then we do math and English, right? Some of the concept was just doing math only, some is doing English only, and a certain demographics.
Assuming that your competitors have similar capabilities, does this come down to marketing? How much of it, I need to have a fund of money when I become a franchisee joining Best in Class community. I'm going to need to have a fund of money to do marketing because that's what's going to bring me the clientele. Is that true, or how true is it?
Yes and no, because I think marketing is rocket science, right? Unless you are as big as McDonald's, national marketing and all that. Marketing come in different form. Marketing means provide good service, have good product, will spread out. 80%, if not more, of our business coming through referral. I love that my kid got an improvement. I'm telling my cousin, I'm telling my community, we double down on referrals, right? And then other thing that we do is like social media, local community, attending an event and all that. No concept have unlimited resources for marketing. You can spend as little as $500 a week to $50,000 a week in marketing, right? So it's just so many ways to market, right? From traditional mail to AI, SEO and all this stuff. It depends on how much money they have. And then we have a playbook called the LGAP Lead Generation Action Plan. Depend on the bandwidth where they open, and we try out different things. And if it works, we double down. It doesn't work, we don't spend more money on this area and we do other. But it's a combination of social media, word of mouth, having event and all that. Those are proven the most effective. It doesn't cost an arm and a leg. Marketing is both money and effort, Dr. Hay. You cannot say, I have $10,000. I'm not going to step outside my house. I'm going to put $5,000 on Facebook and pray that it works. It doesn't work that way. It is time and money. It has to be a combination of both.
Yeah. So, Hao, if I said to you, you can't franchise education anymore for whatever reason, what are you going to franchise then? What's next?
Besides education, I'm very passionate about, real estate. If someday I cannot franchise the business, I probably will franchise a maybe like a property management concept, right? Something that has a recurring model, because having customer acquisition is costly, is difficult in any business, food concept and all this stuff. If a listener were to franchise a concept, one thing that I like to share is looking at something that have a recurring model, right? Like a subscription model. If a student sign up for us, it's at least 2-3 years. I know it's costly to recruit a student, but the student do not stay for 1 day, 1 month, right? It is 2 to 3 years. That's why one of our core concept is KA, is a recurring model. And of course, the S is a one-time deal, but the price is significantly higher. So I would probably franchise a property management concept. I'm sure there are something out there already.
There are some out there already, and I appreciate your interest in real estate. I certainly have had that as well. I don't know if I've ever told you that I was the CEO of We Buy Ugly Houses before I went back to education. I owned my own rental properties as well in Dallas. I love that business. There's certainly opportunities there, and maybe down the road, Hao, you'll sell off Best in Class, and I will decide to leave the university and we'll team up and we'll do something in real estate. You are genuinely a wonderful human being, driven. You've got all the values that somebody would want in a franchisor. And I that's why I wanted to have you on my program. I hold you up there as an example for other franchisors, and people can contact you at bestinclass.com. Is that?
Yeah, Hao at bestinclasseducation.com. Thank you so much. It's such an honor to be a board of advisor on the Titus Center, and such an honor to be a guest on Franchise Hot Seat. And I look forward to seeing you again very soon.
Yeah, I'll see you soon at our next meeting, and thank you for your devotion to our program. Our students benefit from how you help us. I hope maybe down the road you get some of our graduates who become franchisees or join your corporate team. Maybe you can develop an internship for them as well. And that's all part of what we do at Titus Center. And we can't do that without the help of Hao Lam and so many others who have a heart for franchise education. Thank you again, Hao.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hayes.
Thanks for tuning in to the Franchise Hot Seat Podcast with Dr. John P. Hayes. Tune in next time for more conversation around all things franchising.